Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the ReQuest. It's me, Captain Logan. Joining me, as always, is Austin, TheDayGhost. And
what's up?
And today we're going to talk about who would win in a fight. My favorite topic of anything on YouTube, Austin. I just love trying to guess who would win in a fight between two classic fictional characters.
And not even two specific ones this time.
No, just like species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like who would win in a fight, man or a bear?
I was gonna say like Klingons and Romulans.
Yeah, but mine was cooler.
No, it wasn't. Maybe.
I don't know.
Doesn't it depend on the Klingon or the Romulan? Does it depend on the bear and whatever the other thing is you said? What was the other thing you said?
Man.
Oh, man and bear. But yours is so generic.
Yeah, but one of the big town highlights, according to my dad, for people in his age group, is that just outside of town they had a boxing match between a bear and a person, and they got in the ring and the bear peed in it, and the entire thing was like completely canceled. And I was like, apparently Canadians are redneck enough to have a bear-human boxing match, but not redneck enough to keep fighting after it pees in the ring.
Wow, that might have been worth this whole video.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, he constantly goes, ask anyone my age from this town. They'll tell you. They know about the bear match.
EMC Comics, and welcome everybody joining us right now. I haven't even introduced the subject yet. He says, hey guys, I don't really have much of anything to contribute to the stream, and yet here I am.
Welcome.
I honestly kind of feel a little bit that way myself. So tonight we're going to talk about the final episode of a reality TV show from 2011, or that ended in 11, that got 3 seasons on Spike TV at the tail end of the history of Spike TV, I think. And this was Deadliest Warrior, and the final episode was Vampires versus Zombies? Is that the order that they went with?
Yeah, exactly. I think so. I think it was Vampires versus Zombies, not the other way around.
And this was requested on Patreon by Karl Maxey, and thanks a lot to Karl. I was really surprised, maybe I should say even shocked, that he requested another episode of the show after he asked me to do one before Austin was on the program, so at least a year and a half ago, but it might have been even a little bit earlier than that. And my apologies for the wait time on this show, guys. We actually have a lot of interest, and you guys are wonderful, by the way, everybody that makes requests on this show. But we only do this once a week, and there's usually a list of at least 14, if not 16 or more things that we're waiting to get to. So it's at least a 4-month wait right now. So finally getting to another episode of Deadliest Warrior. But yeah, Austin, that was a weird, challenging sort of thing to review. It was kind of fun to talk about, weirdly. Do
you remember which one you did?
Yeah, I did. It was, I'm glad you asked. It was ninjas versus Vikings, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was my introduction to that show. I'd never seen it before.
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of every season, too, they do like the whole season thing where they go, okay, but who's like the deadliest of all of them? Except for this season, I guess.
They didn't do in a whole episode of that, but they did that in the Aftermath show.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, that's what it is. Yeah, because this one had like a little thing that was like, check out the after show, but
yeah,
I had a hard enough time trying to find this episode in general.
I actually watched that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it didn't add a lot of extra, and it was very awkward, but I did watch that. So I don't know. My assumption is Karl just really enjoys the show, and I don't want to give any crap to Karl, and I really appreciate his requesting this. I don't know why anybody cares what I have to say about this kind of thing, and this is, again, a sort of odd thing to review. This feels like, for me, and again, all respect to Karl, because this can be a fun thing to do, of course, but this feels to me, Austin, like a pointless exercise about a pointless exercise.
We are, like... because I watched a little bit.
Samurai versus Viking. Thanks, Karl. Yeah, that's what it was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
This is so vague and arbitrary that I don't know how you begin to try to, whether you think that any of the scientific, like the quote unquote scientific, experimentation that they do in this show is valid, especially with this. There's just a million and one like caveats you got to come up with.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, it's weird because you said like the generic thing of like, just kind of samurai versus Viking, but then sometimes it's more specific. Like there's a Jesse James versus Al Capone one. Like that's a very specific, like this person versus this
Well,
person.
apparently third season had a lot of specific characters, like George Washington was one.
Weird.
And Genghis Khan.
Oh, you know what? I knew Genghis Khan because they did a game, and the first game is more generic, and then the second game is like specific people, and I think Genghis Khan was one of the people that was on the box for that.
So I would think that, and this episode does sort of do this, but I would think to have as even a playing field as possible. It's so weird critiquing something like this again. That you'd want to at least have a specific individual person versus another specific individual person, or a group versus another group. So when I watched the Aftermath thing and they were trying to break down who the Deadliest Warrior was of the whole season, they had 4 specific individual people. I forget who they were, and then and then like Army Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
And Army Rangers won. Just like the broad category of American Army Rangers. And I was like, versus George Washington? The guy? By himself?
Well, that's
okay.
That is the thing, though. Like, there's a Spartan episode, and it's like, you're never going to fight a Spartan. Like, part of the thing with Spartans is that, they're like a group, and they have, like, their shield formation. So, like, just having a Spartan...
Well, that's why I appreciate that this at least wasn't a vampire versus a zombie, because that episode's done in 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's
that episode's
true.
done in 30 seconds. Like, I mean, like me versus a zombie, I've got a little bit of a chance.
Yeah,
but at least more of a chance than I do against Batman. I don't know if you heard that the other day, but the Ant-Man 3 stream, everybody got sick of us talking about that movie. And by the end, it just became a debate in the comments about whether or not I would win in a fight with Batman if I had prep time. And it was specifically, if Cap has time to prepare for this fight, can he beat Batman? Yes, I'm bringing this up again, but it's kind of relevant because it's who would win in a fight.
Well, what would you say if you saw Batman before the fight?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm Batman because he's Batman. I'd be like, you're Batman.
You wouldn't say, it's the freaking Bat!
Sorry, I didn't know where you were going with that.
Oh, okay.
It's the freaking Bat! No, I'd go, the Batman. Okay, so Austin, this will be hilarious. Would you give us a synopsis of this episode?
No. What are you doing? Okay.
What happens? This is not a story-driven thing, but just give us a quick breakdown of how of who is involved in this. Who are the players here? Give us our Shakespearean character breakdown, okay? What is the dramatis persona for this, and then how do they attempt? Yeah, I said it. And then how do they attempt to determine who would win in a fight between vampires and zombies?
Okay, so Deadliest Warrior features scientists who are actually scientists, to be fair to them, and doctors or whatever, but they don't use their degrees on this show. And they have to figure out who's the Deadliest Warrior, of course, it's in the title, and then they do very pseudo-science-y ways of figuring things out. So they bring on for this 2 people for the vampire side and 2 people for the
They play it like a Mythbusters sort of thing.
They play it like a what, sorry?
Like Mythbusters.
Oh, okay, yeah. And I've never
seen
Mythbusters, so...
It's just like, we got to do an experiment to try to prove something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, except from what I understand, that's more like... you can, like, actually prove it.
Well, that's what I mean, but I think that they're kind of going off of the success of that a little bit.
That would make sense.
And we should mention, if this came out now, it would just be a YouTube show.
Well, it is a YouTube show.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot... Well, but there's, like, a whole category of this kind of thing, but I don't really know what the death battle thing is. I thought that was slightly different from this.
I've seen a couple of those, and it's almost exactly like this, except animated, and I guess they don't technically do, like, the experiment aspect, but they talk about like, oh, well, you know, this person can do this, this person can do that.
Oh, but it's a lot of comic characters and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like
so
Nightwing versus Carnage or whatever.
So it's not like, oh, well, Nightwing can hit people with a stick. Let's give a stick to some dude and have him hit things, and that proves how good Nightwing is. There's nothing like that. But I don't. It's like kind of the same thing.
But yeah, then, so how do they try to prove it?
Yeah. So with this specifically, you got zombies and vampires. So I was talking before we had that brief aside about the people on each side.
So, sorry about that. Yeah.
No, it's okay. So on the zombie side, you have the writer of World War Z, and this like real life organization leader that runs the thing about zombie outbreaks. And like you can go to his website and it's like a real organization.
Look, it can happen, man. We're gonna be glad that guy's there when the zombie apocalypse happens, Austin.
I don't know.
He's all ready for it.
It's super cringy. I didn't realize that was like a real thing.
It's one of those things where I can't tell if he's joking or not.
I don't know, because they also say in this episode that the CDC has like an official thing about zombies.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Like that's such just like a waste of time. People are stupid. And then on the vampire side, we have the writer of 30 Days of Night, and it was like a vampire survival book. And that one I'm pretty sure is more like a fictional thing and not a guy who believes this will happen.
Yeah, I thought the zombie survival guide was also like that, but that's crazy if it's not.
No,
because I've seen that at bookstores.
If you go to his website, it's more legitimate. But I could be wrong about that.
Are you sure he's not just trying to be as realistic as possible, but like having fun with it?
But like, I don't know. There's like the exact same websites for like Bigfoot and stuff.
Okay, but in that Aftermath thing, the way he's talking, it doesn't sound like he believes it. He's talking about how like these things don't exist, but like you know they like here's the real like tiny % chance that they could, that kind of thing.
I don't know. He was like, maybe.
Karl Maxey says, "You say it's a waste of time until the apocalypse happens."
I mean, it's a waste of time.
Now there's an argument brewing in the and I want somebody to make this video for me. Would you? Now there's an argument brewing in the comments about whether or not I would beat the Amish in a fight, and then Robert said, "With prep time."
I think they would beat you and then build a little prison around you that you couldn't get out of.
Dude, we're doing this right before bedtime, okay? I'm gonna have nightmares now.
Just like the Amish are attacking you?
Yeah, that's scary.
You're gonna wake up in like just like a random warehouse that was available to be filmed at, and then the Amish appear.
This Amish beatdown was filmed in front of a studio audience.
Oh my god, I want to hear that. Like, you get hit by them and there's a laugh track. That sounds wonderful.
That's horrifying. Anyway, give us the rest of the synopsis.
Yeah, so they decide different things based on science. In the main show, it's already like just like really stupid pseudoscience. Like I think I mentioned this in the last ReQuest when you said that we were doing this. It'll be like, like I said, the Al Capone versus Jesse James one. And they'll go, okay, well, this guy is like kind of cowboy-y. Let's have him go through a field and like shoot things with a revolver. Okay, he hit like 8 out of 9 targets. He's pretty good. Let's have like a different guy run through the same course with a Tommy gun. Well, he hit all of the targets. And it's like, yeah, a Tommy gun's probably better than the revolver. But you had 2 different people do it. Like, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, if any kids watched this, and took to heart the way you do, like a scientific experiment, they're not gonna do very well at their science fair.
Mm-hmm. No, and this has that too, except it's like
that's not how the scientific method works.
Yeah, no, exactly. And this has it too, but it's with fictional characters, and I have no idea where, like, they get anything. like we go, okay, well, how hard can a zombie bite? To prove that, we'll have a dog bite the sensor that's in this padding on this guy's arm. Okay, well, that proved this. Okay, yeah.
And then they do the same thing with a crocodile for vampires?
Yeah, and I don't know where any of that comes from. Like, why is a vampire's bite that much stronger? I don't know.
Why would a zombie bite be as hard as an attack dog?
Yeah.
Like, I get their argument about how zombies have something akin to super strength, maybe, or at least are stronger because they don't have inhibitions, and they don't, and they talk a lot about how they don't have, and there's a lot of repetition in this. They talk a lot about how they don't have a survival instinct, and so there's nothing holding them back. They talk about how there's they like have a biological lack of fear, but that doesn't mean that you'd bite as hard as an attack dog.
Or that
and why
a vampire
specifically an attack dog?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you have a vampire that bites like just into your jugular to suck your blood out. Why is that then have the bite of a crocodile compared to a zombie, which is the bite of a dog? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know where they got any of that.
Yeah, like, are crocodile teeth somehow more like vampire teeth because they're like vampire teeth because they're sharper, but they're not fangs? Why didn't you go for a fang, Dan? I would think like wolves or dogs would be closer to vampire teeth.
Well, and the big thing with
teeth.
crocodiles specifically is that they have the strongest like jaw snap in the animal kingdom. So like, okay, I guess like I don't know how any of this factors.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
Well, and we should talk about the parameters they used in trying to create a set of rules, because to their credit, at least they didn't go like exactly any old zombie, any old vampire. Like, it's still pretty generic, but at least they defined terms. And I know you don't like the terms they defined, particularly with the vampires, but at least they did that.
That is true.
I don't buy some of even the rules they came up with it. But they said, well, they were trying to make things equal. They were trying to go apples and apples. So they said, it's modern zombies as opposed to voodoo zombies. Okay, I mean, that's the popular version. That's what most everybody knows now. That's what most of us care about. So that's the one that you would want to use, of course. And it's kind of more interesting with this sort of a show where we're talking about usually real-life people or groups of people that actually existed. So I would think you'd want to get out of the realm of the supernatural entirely if you could. So you're saying zombies that are created by a virus, because it could happen maybe, but then with vampires, they don't even talk about what creates the vampires. I would think you would say it's just another virus vampire, because we've had those before, but they go, well, they don't even say it's mystical, but my assumption is it's mystical, and they just go, well, it's a vampire, but it's the modern kind, like in 30 Days of Night.
Yeah.
So it's
Which is basically just a zombie anyway. Like,
yeah,
there's not enough of a differentiation, which is why they should have gone more traditional with it. But whatever, who cares? It's like a dumb versus thing. But
yeah, but I mean, I think that's more interesting.
No,
anyway.
absolutely. So yeah, they do stuff like that. They go, okay, well, there needs to be more zombies because strength in numbers. So they make claw fingers and like put it on. Okay. Anybody who's never seen this, at least look up the scene, because it is one of the most baffling things you'll ever see. So they give a martial artist claw fingers, and then they put little zombies on strings, and they like shoot them at the guy, and he just runs around stabbing them.
And so the idea is how long before he gets overwhelmed. And I'm like, your sample set is one guy that's like a karate champion that breaks bricks with his hands. Or breaks boards with his hands with Wolverine claws. Like, I don't understand how that.
Gloves.
I don't understand how that. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how that tells us anything. And what they do is they have this computer computer model they do with every episode where they just willy-nilly plug in, they say, like bits of information into it, and it sounds like a witch's brew. It's like, oh, we learned this, we'll throw that in there, and then we'll throw this in there. We've got these X factors, and I don't know what they mean half the time when they say they're going to plug those into the simulation? I don't know what they...
pseudoscience. They're like,
I don't know what they do.
Plug all these things into it, and like it doesn't actually mean anything.
No. Well, it seems like all the numbers by the end have to be made up. I don't know if they're plugging into actually anything. Maybe they are, but I don't really know what the computer model looks like. But anyway, I just don't understand what it even really tells them, because like, well, he was able to beat X number of vampires before, or sorry, of zombies. He's supposed to be a vampire before he gets overwhelmed. So we'll plug that into the formula. You might as well have just made up a number. It's one guy.
Mm-hmm. Well,
who doesn't have.
It's always one person, so you'll never repeat the results because it's always based on one person's skills.
Yeah. So you should do it with maybe like, I don't know, 50 or 100 of at least, bear with me, at least the same kind of person with the same skill set.
Yeah, like actual science.
So if you had like, it still wouldn't tell you anything with vampires because the guy doesn't have superhuman strength.
He's not a vampire.
He's not a vampire.
They just randomly say, vampires are about 6 times that of a normal person. So if a person can do this, you multiply that by 6.
You know what this would be like? This would be like if... This is such a stupid thing to... This is a dumb conversation anyway. But, yeah, so I'm going to say this. One thing I was a little bit surprised by was when they're breaking down the vampire weaknesses, they went, well, we're going to get rid of all the traditional Judeo-Christian stuff and go with the modern vampire, which is really outdated now because we've kind of swung back the other way. We don't do this version of vampires that much anymore because it's boring and it's kind of close to zombies. But they didn't really talk about sunlight. And then you get to the end and they show their like mock-up where they've dressed up vampires and zombies. Suddenly sunlight's involved. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm. That was weird. Where like the vampire's cowering because of sunlight, so he's got to run the other direction in the middle of the big generic warehouse they're in. But what I was gonna say is, what we were just talking about with the sample set of one that's not a vampire, just saying, he's like a vampire, he's a karate champion. It would be like if you took somebody who never goes out in the sun and like lives in their basement and hasn't seen sunlight in like 3 years, and then threw him outside to see how long it took him to get a sunburn. We'll plug that into the formula.
Multiply it by 6. Okay.
So is the problem with this, Austin, that the way they did it, and I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyway, is it that their methodology is not scientific enough, or that the exercise is pointless in the first place?
For this one specifically, the exercise is pointless. But I think the show in general, they're not scientific enough about it. Like, even if you went, okay, like maybe it's interesting to compare groups, you can still do it more scientifically and more interesting, I think. But it's a TV show on the Spike Network, which means that it's kind of meatheady.
Yeah.
And by kind of, I mean very. And that's not like an insult to people who watched
it,
or to meatheads. But that's 100% what they were aimed at. Like,
yeah.
Every show on Spike TV was women in bikinis, gun shooting, violence.
It was the original G4.
Yeah,
it was like that.
No, because when I was a kid, I watched like 1,000 Ways to Die, and my cousin who lived with us for a bit watched Mansers on there, and like that's all it was.
But I'm not gonna begrudge people watching, silly, mindless television, because that can be fun if it's not all you do.
No, I'm just saying like
this was entertaining, and I was entertained by the first one I watched too. It's just you talk about it for 5 seconds and the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, I think it was just for me. It's always been because even as a kid, I thought the show was bull, but it was always just like
Penn and Teller should have done an episode on this show.
Penn and Teller should have been candidates in it. Who would they fight?
Who would win? Oh, I thought you were going to say who would win in a fight between Penn and Teller.
Oh, that's a good one too. Well, it could be Penn and Teller versus Abbott and Costello. That could be a thing.
Well, and doesn't the fascination with this whole thing, I mean, like comic fans especially have been fascinated with who would win in a fight forever, but particularly in media, this all kind of goes back to Celebrity Deathmatch, doesn't it? In the 90s.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that show.
Do you know about that?
Yeah.
where you take two random celebrities and you do like a mock-up clay fight that was in stop motion.
Yep.
That's kind of where this starts.
Yeah. For like this kind of a thing, yeah. Obviously, like there was versus movies before that, but yeah, that's true. I completely forgot about that show.
So, so they decide again that it's got to be they got to come up with a ratio of how many zombies are going to fight a vampire or fight how many vampires. And so by the end, they end up making the ratio like 1 to 67, I think. They're like, seems like
63.
Seems like, oh yeah, that's right. 63 zombies have a chance against a vampire. Again, a thing that they come up with somewhat arbitrarily. And then the big fight we see at the end, they've multiplied that by 3. So it's like 170 something zombies versus 3 vampires.
And when you get to the actual fight, they have little counters because you really need that to know what's happening.
Yeah, and at some point, they just start dropping the zombie counter like crazy, and they're not even showing you a lot of the zombies that are being killed.
No, because they clearly had like 10 guys in zombie makeup. And like, obviously it's a TV show, and this is very clearly the last episode. Like, even going into it.
You think they're out of money?
100%. Like, when you get to the models...
But in that Aftermath show, they talk about it like they think they're getting another season.
But I think they did this because they went, oh my god, our ratings are in the toilet. Let's do something big that like will get people to watch it, and maybe that'll save us for the network.
That's a good point. They could be out of money for the season. That doesn't tell you whether they're canceled or not. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I think they were on the verge of being canceled. They knew that, and they said, oh my god, how do we get people to watch this? Like, otherwise it's done. And you can really tell they were out of money because the models in this are so bad.
And like the paper mache zombies.
And it's way worse than like anything I've ever seen from this show for that stuff. Like, they're normally, because that's the stuff that they know people are there for, right?
Yeah.
And they'll do stuff like they'll like hack away at like pig carcasses and stuff, and not like paper mache zombies on strings.
Which again, what does it tell you? It's plastic.
Yeah.
And paper mache. Yeah. And it seems like their panelists are talking about it like it looks way better than it does.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because they got to sell it.
At one point, somebody says, and I forget which guy it was, if it was like the army guy who's the host, or the I forget what his background is, but he was like I don't know, like a beret or a sniper or something major. But I don't remember if it was him or who was like, this is the, most realistic zombie we're ever going to be able to make. I'm like, you guys are going to be able to make. Like,
yeah, it looks really bad.
Oh, so I kind of misspoke when I said panelists. Can we talk about that whole thing for a second?
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, this season has like another guy. Like, they like swap somebody out. Because the bald guy in this, it's like a tactical strategist or something.
Yeah, okay, that's what it was. Yeah, that's what I was saying was like a beret or something. I wasn't sure what he did.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
But they've got so. Like I said, I kind of misspoke when I said panelists. They have their host and their like experts, right? And then they say that they have a panel that has off-screen answered a lot of questions about zombies and vampires, and they've given us none of what that of what that questionnaire was. We don't know what any of the questions were. We just have to take their word for it. And they've plugged that all also into the scenario, right? Yep. They have this super misleading thing at the beginning where and once they start talking about the panel again later, it's not a lie, but they make most of the audience, especially if you've never seen the show before, think that George Romero is going to show up in the show.
They do, because I was like, wait a minute, they got George A. Romero for this?
Now, the first hint that it won't be him is that they just have a picture of him and not actually him in it. It's just like a publicity photo.
Yeah.
But they say we have a panel. The voiceover guy that they have that sounds like
it's David Wenham.
That sounds like Anthony Hopkins. He's doing like a poor man's Anthony Hopkins.
That's David Wenham. He's like the
main
thing that sells this show. He is
okay, but that's sort of what he's doing. He's doing Anthony Hopkins.
Well, that's just what he sounds like.
Is it? Okay.
He is Faramir in Lord of the Rings, and he's the main villain in season 1 of Iron Fist.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. My favorite superhero show.
No, he's slumming it. He's like, I was in Lord of the Rings, now I'm going, who will win? Vampires. Zombies.
He sounds like he should be in a Mortal Kombat movie.
I mean, he should be. That'd be awesome.
He should be Sang Soong or whatever the villain is. I'm still doing this.
People will be pissed if they make him a white guy.
I still can't remember. Oh yeah, that's true.
He could be like Johnny Cage's
no,
dad.
Who could he be? Yeah. Well, anyway, I digress. So, they go. We have a panel of experts.
Although I want to see David Wenham show up and be like, my name is Shang Tsung. But anyways.
Anyway, can we move on? So he goes. We have a panel of experts, and including George Romero. And
Sir, not appearing in this episode.
Yeah, and then I don't know why I made him Gilbert Gottfried, but then later, they bring up the panel again, and they go. He goes, representing the panel is Max Brooks and the guy that made 30 Days of Night and some other things, and I'm like, wait, representing? Oh, okay. So you didn't get George Romero in this show.
Yeah. What?
But it made you think they did for about 5 seconds.
What did they think that in that 5 seconds people would be like, oh my god, Romero's in this? They call up their friends and be like, turn on the television.
I just saw a headshot of George Romero.
He's gonna be on. You gotta check this out. I bet you that was in the ad.
Watch this episode where George Romero filled out a questionnaire that you'll never see off screen.
George Romero and his zombies fight against vampires.
Fight against generic modern vampires.
Not Twilight, though.
Based on such popular films as Daybreakers, which no one saw and sucks.
And 50 Shades.
50 Shades of Night.
A movie no one else saw.
And was also not very good. And I don't think. And did you catch this? They kept bringing up Blade Trinity.
Yeah.
It wasn't Blade. They were like modern vampires in such films as Daybreakers and Blade Trinity. And it was almost like, whenever it would come up, it was almost like somebody had to remind them to make sure and say the most recent one. So they just wanted to say Blade or Blade 2, Blade Trinity.
Well, and what's even weirder is they go, yeah, it's kind of silly that, like, vampires have 2 fangs. Most modern things, it's, like, all the fangs. Blade Trinity does that. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
They also just have 2 fangs.
It doesn't. I don't know what he's talking about.
The 50 Shades of Night guy. Have you seen Blade Trinity?
Yeah, why didn't they go to I Am Legend, which is kind of that sort of vampire? It's basically zombies, but they're technically vampires.
That's the zombies. I mean, they're basically zombies, but the vampires you see in the fight part are basically the I Am Legend vampires, just with hair.
Well, I have to be honest with you. Robert makes a terrific point. He says you might as well just reference the Blade TV series by that point, which aired on Spike TV. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know what's funny? I haven't seen 30 Days of Night in a long time, and I remember not liking it. I mean, it's been like 10 years or more, but I remember not really caring for it, and I never read the comic. But for years, I've been referring to that as an example of a modern zombie film. I didn't even remember it was supposed to be vampires.
Yeah, because we hit a point where the vampires in pop culture were zombies or Twilight. And that was kind of it. And then zombies were zombies.
Max Brooks has a point where he makes fun of the sparkling vampires.
Oh, of course. You got to sneak it in because this is like 2011.
Yeah.
So this is like in the heart of that.
One of the most awkward things to sit through in the Aftermath show, I don't know why I watched that, but I did. I paid to watch that, by the way. It was on there. I was like, I'm afraid I don't have anything to say about this. So that's why I watched it. I was like, I need more material. So I watched that. In that, they have this really weird, like, clip, like 2.5-minute clip show that's just Max Brooks saying things, I think most of or all of which were in the episode, just interview material with him, and it's like remixed, and sometimes he'll say things like 3 times in a row because they think it's funny, and it's got like a soundtrack underneath it, and it's bookended with the host of that show, who's some random Scottish guy who goes, and I'm not going to do a Scottish accent, but the Scottish guy, he's like, Max Brooks is hilarious. And everybody couldn't believe how funny he is because he's Mel Brooks' son. So, like, he's so funny, that Max Brooks. And then, I don't know if you knew that was Mel Brooks' son, but
I learned that recently, and it blew my mind.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. And by the way, I am a fan of World War Z. I like this book. I've got it right here, and it's wonderful. And I based, or I kind of did my food novel as a parody to some degree of World War Z, but that was a lot of the inspiration for what I did with my book. And anyway, so I admire him, and I thought some of his explanations for why zombies could potentially beat vampires in a fight were decent enough. I thought he was having fun with it, but what I didn't understand was why everybody was acting like he was hilarious, because he doesn't say anything that's like funny, not like laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I am imagining this remix thing, like Max Brooks yelling, these zombies played the city like a harp from hell, and then the Scottish guy like DJ spinning a CD, and you get a record scratch noise, and then he's just like, oh, he's so funny.
It's the voiceover guy. He's like, and he played the city like a harp from hell.
Exactly.
And this was right before that movie came out. So it's World War Z.
Oh, World War Z.
So it's,
this would have been like what, 2 years?
It's in 12 or 13, and
I think it's 13.
It's brought up in the show where it's like soon to be a major motion picture.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had to look up when 30 Days of Night came out, because they keep referencing both, and I was like it's just an ad? Like, oh, no, I guess not for 30 Days of Night, because that came out like 4 years ago.
Yeah, but it kind of felt like it.
It really does.
And especially vampire like for Blade Trinity, like it's in the theater. I don't remember what year that came out, but it's like, rush out and go see Blade Trinity.
Yeah, that's even longer.
That's quite a bit earlier, I thought.
That's at least a year or two before 30 Days of Night.
Jareth Gearhart, vampires are all over the place with rules. Not to mention Dracula can turn into a wolf, and Robert Wilde says Dracula can literally turn into mist. So
that's true.
So they go and they're trying to even the playing field and make this concept make any sense at all to
the second attempt. You have to go, okay, one-on-one, it's like a very easy victory. So we need to figure out how many you need on one side. The second you have to do that, I feel like you're already admitting that this side won.
Yeah, I mean, their argument is, but zombies are a horde, not a singular entity. And my response to that is, but the guys representing the vampires on the other side are also talking about the ways in which they're a pack species. So, like, they're also, I mean, it's not the same thing as zombies, but they're also not always going to be all by themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, you would need a horde versus a horde, or some intelligent singular characters against intelligent singular characters. I mean, if you really like this kind of argument, the who would win in a fight kind of thing, it could be sort of interesting to go, kind of like how many of something would it take to change a light bulb, right? Like, how many vampires would it, or how many zombies would it take to take on one vampire? Okay, but that's not really the premise of your show is the problem.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly.
So that was kind of the issue with it. But I wanted to talk about the powers and weaknesses with vampires, because, again, they're really generic, but they cut a lot of stuff out so intentionally. So they go, well, it's modern vampires, so they got a whole mouthful of teeth because that's more realistic than 2 teeth that can get into a vein.
Yeah, which is just so weird. It's like, yeah, they're fictional.
It's like, how do they do it every time? And I'm like, there's a lot of things in nature that are real precise about what they can, how they can sear something open, and you know, the instincts that evolve, and I've never heard that as a criticism.
Yeah,
a vampire.
Never.
Have you?
No, that feels like the type of thing that we saw a lot after Infinity War, right? Where people were like, "Oh, Thanos in the comics is just like a simp. Like he sucks." Like it's almost like that, right? We're like, nobody's ever complained about this except now we have to beef up stupid modern vampires.
It's just retroactive, yeah. So you go, well, so here's my response to 2 vampire fangs. They're not going to be able to stick it in the right vein every time. Okay, they're super strong, and the person is going to be terrified, and they're already bleeding. Here's an idea: rip your face out and try again. And if that doesn't work, rip your face out and try again. Like, it's not that big of a deal in most situations.
Well, apparently you have the bite of a crocodile, so it doesn't really matter how many fangs you have.
Also, vampires aren't chompers. I guess these are supposed to be, according to them.
Well, according to them, vampires are intelligent, and then when you get into the fight, they just walk around going, "Roar."
They seem like werewolves to me.
They're like cavemen.
Yeah. So anyway, I brought this up to say that it's kind of silly that they make a big deal out of we're getting rid of a lot of the regular weaknesses that are like more mythic and Judeo-Christian in origin, even though they're making a big deal out of how the zombies got the way they got. But nothing about the vampires. I don't know how these vampires are vampires. And they go, well, we're going to get rid of the garlic and the crosses. And I thought sunlight until sunlight mattered at the end, but they never bring that up. They're like, well, you could stake through the heart or cut off the head. And that's it. They don't even talk about fire. Fire's not a thing anymore, apparently. And they just really dwindle down the mythology as far as they can dwindle it. And I go, what is the point in even bringing up things like crosses? Because the zombies ain't gonna be walking around with those. That's not how they're gonna kill them anyway.
Walk around with crosses, or not crosses, stakes. That's the second time I've done that today.
Yeah.
While talking to you specifically. They're walking around with stakes so they can stab them in.
They got super soakers filled with holy water. The zombies.
And garlic water.
Are you with me on that? That was weird.
Yeah. You know, it's very weird.
And then, you gotta wonder, and you could write here. The problem is, you can make up any mythology for these things you want to, and change rules, and we can argue, like, it's sort of like when you adapt fictional characters, at what point do you strip enough away from a thing that it is no longer the thing that you're adapting in the first place, right? It doesn't have the spirit of it anymore. But
when I was shocked with that specifically, that we never talked about like the running versus walking zombie.
Yeah, that never comes up, and
because that was starting to get big, just a few years before that. But it was like,
that's almost a decade before, because 28 Days Later is 2003, and that's fast moving zombies.
Oh, okay, yeah, and I always think of Dawn of the Dead, the remake, which is 2004, and that's that too.
But that's the first really popular thing that does it, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. But I think those two are like the big things together.
But riddle me this. Traditionally, with any vampire mythology you've ever seen, not even traditionally, just anything you've ever seen, would you buy that a vampire could get a zombie virus?
No.
They're not susceptible to disease in the same way because they're dead. Like, they're undead, and they keep talking about how they're undead, but then one of the big arguments on the this is such a stupid conversation. And I can't believe we've had it this long, but one of my goals was to figure out how to actually turn this into a regular length episode of ReQuest. But one of the big arguments on the zombie side is, well, yes, the vampires are intelligent, and yes, they have super strength and all of that, but if enough zombies got around them and they started chomping on them real hard, they would lose a lot of blood and they could turn into a zombie. And in fact, when they do the simulation, the physical simulation at the end with the actors, you see a zombie or a vampire that gets zombified and then he just turns into dust. And I cried foul on that real hard, where I was like, I don't think it would matter if a zombie bit a vampire. And furthermore, even if it did, why would a zombie bite a vampire? Because they're undead, and they wouldn't register it as brains, I wouldn't think. Like, I'm not really sure they would even go after a vampire. And then you can say, well, to protect themselves, but then the show makes a big deal out of, and I think they're right about this, that there's, again, no self-preservation instinct, so they would just keep going after whatever person they were after to get the brains, until, even as they were all getting killed off. So would they even fight vampires? And by the way, the vampires win. We didn't say that, but they do.
Yeah, which was very obvious.
But they make a big deal out of how close it was, because I think they just make up numbers. And look how close it was. It was like 2,471 to 2,300 and whatever. Like,
it was like 51% to 49, and they're like, it was so much closer than we expected. And it's like, okay.
All right, whatever. It's really obvious who's going to win this.
It's like, because they have like the parts in between where it like cuts back to them being live, and they're like, oh, let's check in on the vote on Twitter to see who, like, what people will think will win. And it's like, okay, we just had the arguments for zombies. Whoa, zombies are up 54%. That's pretty crazy there. I don't know if vampires can come back from this. And it's like,
this is a popularity contest at that point. Like, who cares what the public says? You're going to vote for whichever one you like more. If you're a zombie fan, you vote for the zombies. And I know that because the guys that wrote the books about the zombies were on the zombie side, because they wrote books about it.
Yeah, well, and the zombies were winning after they did all the evidence for zombies, and then vampires were winning after they did the evidence for vampires.
So yeah, ultimately I was like, I'm not even buying your premise anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think this kind of thing, if it's interesting at all, is like I kind of just wanted to see, and I'm boring and pretentious, and I like talk driven things, like dialogue driven things over action driven things much of the time. The places where I was at all remotely close to something akin to intellectually stimulated watching this was when the authors of the books would kind of debate back and forth a little bit, and we're just kind of playing, devil's advocate or whatever. This is the side we were assigned on, so we're making arguments. It's kind of debate club, right? Mm-hmm. This kind of thing, if it was just a debate club, is way more interesting to me than watching
This does feel like a high school debate
grabbing onto things. Like, I'd much rather just let these guys stand at podiums and argue their case, and you don't have to spend any money at all. And I'd be much more interested in that.
Mm-hmm. No, it does feel like a high school debate I would have, where it's like you do your first one, and it's like, should we have gum in school? And then you do that debate, and then the next one is vampires versus zombies. And I was slamming my head on the desk.
Robert Wild says, can a vampire drink zombie blood? And Elijah Wilcott says, yeah, for sure. See, I would think they'd be able to also. I don't know if it would sustain them or anything, but I wouldn't think it would be problematic for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like a vampire could drink like AIDS blood. So they could drink zombie blood.
Well, it makes me wonder, why are they singling out the zombie virus over anything else? Like, if they can get that, wouldn't they be getting all kinds of diseases all day long?
Well, there's like some modern stuff that gets into that, and I don't know, I think that's dumb. There's like a certain level of,
well, like I said, you can tell stories where that happens, and especially if you do vampires that are not undead. because I've read those too. Like that is a modern, more valid way to do this, where like you still have your soul and you're not exactly undead, but you crave blood and you have super strength. And I've read the science fiction vampire book. I can't remember what that was called, but I read a book that did that once, and it was interesting. And you could that vampire would probably get diseases, but also wouldn't die necessarily from a stake through the heart. Although anybody's going to die through a stake through the heart if you do it right.
Yeah,
you're just not going to turn into dust. I always thought that as a weakness was kind of amusing, because it's like, I mean, I would also die from that, or being set on fire, or being beheaded.
Yeah, absolutely. But speaking of ways in which you're obviously dead, I got to mention my favorite person on this show, which is the Doctor. Because
he seems really embarrassed to even be here at the beginning.
The Doctor has always been like the most meat-headed guy, because it'll be like, oh, they shoot something, or like the target of the model or whatever, and then he has to come in and be like, "Yup, that guy's dead," and it's like, you really earned your medical MD, sir. And that's him here, where it's like, oh, the vampire bit part of the brain off. Yeah, and then he comes in and he's like, yep, that's this part of the brain. If it's gone, like, you're not making it. And it's like, yeah, he's got a giant chunk of brain gone. Pretty sure everyone's dead at that point.
So Jareth Gearhart, I'm going to actually answer this. He says that, again, keep in mind that they're getting rid of a lot of the traditional vampire mythology, so this would not be in there anymore. But he says, wouldn't vampires need permission to get in a place with zombies in it? Oh God, I'm overthinking this. Okay, so traditionally speaking, I'm thinking Buffy vampires, but they're taking this from a lot of earlier vampire stuff also. A vampire would have to ask permission to go into someone's home who is still living there and owns it. So a zombie, so in order to have to ask permission to get into a place where the zombies are, it would simply have to be a place where the tenant still lives there, and or not owns it necessarily, but it's their home, it's their residence. So if it's just the old zombies residence, no, you wouldn't have to ask permission because they're dead. So it doesn't count anymore. But if somebody lives there and is still alive, then you would have to ask permission, but not from the zombie, from whoever lives there.
You gotta love vampires. They like grab you and just start sucking your blood, but then they'll ask you for consent to come into your house. They're real respectful.
Austin, we have actually managed to talk about this for nearly an hour. I feel like we've accomplished something. I'm excited about it.
I can't tell if we've accomplished something or if society's fallen.
I don't know. I've enjoyed this immensely. Thanks, Karl. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for making us talk about that. Which is so hypocritical of me, because I hate who would win in a fight arguments.
Yeah, like with a burning passion.
But we talked about other people arguing that. We didn't really argue it ourselves, except just to say, I mean, yeah, obviously vampires would win. Like, shocker.
No context, yeah.
Also, the concept of Deadliest Warrior is weird to me, and I am absolutely overthinking this when I say this. But
okay.
with the concept of the title, I mean, I figure we're already here, and I've been talking about this too long anyway, and this has been a really stupid conversation. So you're trying to determine, air quotes, the deadliest warrior by which of them would beat the other in a fight. But like, that just tells you who would be deadliest to the person that you're fighting. I feel like en masse, would vampires be deadliest to other people or society versus vampires is almost a different conversation, is it not?
Well, and that's so...
Oh, maybe the word warrior is important. They're warriors, they're fighting other warriors, I guess is the idea, but...
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's supposed to be like that. Yeah, that's why in, like, previous seasons, and I assume with this one, in the last episode, they'll go, okay, here's, like, everything that we've had this season, all the winners. Okay, now, like, how would we break it down? to see who would win from that. And there's a lot of BS in that too, where I remember, I think it's in season 1, it's like if they separate it by the invention of gunpowder, I think. And they're like, well, the Apaches are around after gunpowder, and they don't have guns, so they're immediately out. And it's like, okay. I don't know about that one, but okay.
What do you think would have been a better matchup if they had to go to supernatural creatures?
So they only did this because they're the two big ones right now, right? And they like really need people to start watching their show again.
Yeah. Why didn't they just do a spin-off?
Well, yeah. Well, that was a big thing from the start that people wondered, where it was like, are they ever going to do anything like that, like fictional stuff?
Yeah.
I don't have like a good answer off the top of my head. I feel like the obvious one would be like, if you're going to do vampires, is like the Dracula versus Frankenstein thing.
Yeah, make it singular characters.
Mm-hmm.
And make it people you've heard of.
I mean, that can both public domain. So.
I was going to say that can get into rights issues, so you're kind of stuck with public domain stuff unless you've got a parent company that owns characters that somebody will let you use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
But say you had access to like MGM monsters or something, and you did like not MGM. What am I thinking?
Yeah, Universal.
Universal. Yeah. What if you had access to Universal monsters and you were like, who would win in a fight between, like Creature of the Black Lagoon versus, I don't know, somebody. Yeah.
Invisible Man versus the Invisible Girl.
And then I just want them to make a whole season that's all whatever versus zombies versus a horde of zombies, where every episode they have to figure out the ratio. Okay, ratio for zombies versus the Invisible Man. That's about 2 to 1. I'm thinking maybe 1 to 1.
1 to 1. Yeah, I want to watch that show. You're right.
Let's make that show. That sounds great.
And get like really, really weird with the matchups, where it's like not even just horror things. Like it could be anything.
Should we just cave to the masses and like really degenerate and like lower ourselves to least common denominator and just start doing a who would win in a fight show?
No.
Should we do that?
I mean, you can do it. Get John in for that.
I'd only do it if you did it, Austin.
You and John can do the zombies versus show.
Just make it always zombies.
Yeah, like I said, get real weird with it. Be like, I don't know, zombies versus Clueless or something. Like, get really weird.
I am still thinking after I finish some like finite shows about doing a like zombie review show, because we've learned that apparently I really like zombies. Like, this is a lot of fun to talk about in a way it wouldn't have been for me like 10 years ago. But I keep trying to come up with a title for that. And just after this conversation, I'm starting to think maybe the title of that show is Cap Loves Zombies.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what
apparently I do.
Be. I guess it would just have to be that closeted zombie fan.
Closeted zombie fan? And the beginning of every episode, I like come out of a closet to introduce it. That'd be good. That'd be good.
Or you could film it in a closet.
Cap comes out of the... Yeah, I'm in a closet. It's like, when's Cap going to come out of the closet? Oh, he technically has. He's making the show.
Yeah, at the very end, in the last episode, you'll finally come out.
I finally leave, and then I have to...
Done like 8 billion zombie movies.
And I do have a show where I have to break it to my family that I'm a zombie fan, and they're like real close-minded about it.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, we can't have somebody in our family that loves zombies.
Oh, did I miss like the only super chat we've had this show?
Oh, we've had 2 super chats, yeah.
Did we do the first one? I think we did do the first one. Did I not even do the first one?
No, I was just waiting.
Oh, I suck. Okay,
you'd get it because we were like in the middle of a conversation, so I was like, you'll get to them.
My apologies, guys. Josh, $2 super chat. Are you guys having fun? We sure are. I don't know. I have been.
Yeah, I mean, I was bored watching it, but it's been more fun, like ripping it apart, I guess.
Like a paper mache zombie?
Exactly. It was like ripping apart its brain, and then a doctor was like, he's dead.
Elijah Wilcott, $5 Canadian. This show lost all credibility when they said George Washington would beat Napoleon. I guess they needed the American guy to win or something.
I think it lost all credibility when it started.
Well, this is a lot of fun. Thanks once again to Karl Maxey for this wonderful show. This is a lot of fun to talk about. And next time, we're going to go back to comics. And Austin, we're actually going back to Green Lantern.
Oh, weird.
To some degree. We're going to be reviewing a book from the Young Animals line, which I never read any of from DC.
I don't even know what that is.
This is from 2019. It was not an imprint, but a separate continuity that was kind of a... I think it was aimed at... Was it aimed at teenagers? Was it kind of a... Like, it's somewhat more adult. But anyway... this came out in 2019, and it's called Far Sector, and it's a 12-issue mini set in, I guess the wiki I'm reading says set in the DC Comics Green Lantern franchise, so I think it's outside of regular continuity. It's just a Green Lantern thing, but it makes up its own Green Lantern, and it won a Hugo Award for Best Graphic Novel, so I guess we'll see how that is. But
interesting.
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
Robert Wild, $2 super chat. Cap, are you caught up on The Last of Us yet? No, I've got the latest episode to watch, and I'm going out of town pretty soon, so I don't know when I'm going to get to it.
But, I saw the first half of episode 1.
Good job.
I did it.
It's good. Finish it.
Maybe, I don't know.
Austin, what else do you want to say about the show?
This show that we're doing or the show that we watched?
The show that we watched.
I have different thoughts about both.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think his main thought is, I'm not doing this anymore.
I think my main thought is abort. Leave.
No, I know I already announced the next thing, but it just occurred to me. I didn't ask you if there was anything else you wanted to bring up.
No, I feel like, I can't believe we hit an hour, but of course we did, because it's us. We always hit an hour.
Because it's us.
But, we did it.
It's a podcast, you guys.
Yeah, it's something.
Well, anyway, Austin has lost his mind over this. We're going to go ahead and get going.
That is correct. I'm going to go watch some Spike TV.
No, don't do any more of that.
I'm going to go watch Mansters. Just see women in bikinis, guns.
Don't watch Nickelodeon for college students in the early 2000s.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, and when you're like 12, it's like the coolest channel ever. You're like, this is cool. This is so awesome.
You know why this is an achievement? Because there's no way that this is not the only 1 hour plus conversation on the internet about this show.
It's gotta be.
About this episode?
I guarantee you, Cap, that there is a discussion on the entire series, not just one episode. And it's way shorter than this.
That's shorter than an hour. I bet there's nobody on the planet that's had a not recorded conversation this long about this episode of television.
I also bet this is the first time anyone's talked about the show since your last one, and probably like 3 years since that one.
Karl was like, watch this video blow up on Geekvolution. The last one got a weird number of views.
This won't be conspiracy big, but...
and that was a conspiracy in and of itself. I'll never understand how that did the numbers it did, but...
Absolutely.
Everybody, thanks a bunch for watching once again, and we'll see you again real soon. I'm going out of town this weekend, so I may or may not be doing kind of an impromptu later Captain Logan show tomorrow night from a hotel room. I'm not sure yet, but Austin and I will not be doing a Friday show, and I'll be back on Monday, hopefully for a Superhero Rewind, but if not that, for something, because I have a super busy weekend, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to a review, but...
It'll end up being another random show. We've had 2 of those recently.
Those have been fun. I mean, we've got a bunch of stuff to knock off our list, and
we can finally do Riddler Year 1.
Oh yeah, I am curious about that. Anyway, we'll see you later, folks. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
Cap, go watch. Oh my God, I had it, and then my mind deleted. Shaun of the Dead. You gotta go watch Shaun of the Dead. So you have your zombie thing, and then you got to go watch Midnight Mass for a really good modern vampire thing.
Okay, thank you for the recommendations.
Yeah. Bye.
Can we go now? Bye, everybody.